Hi everybody, it's Laura. Thank you so much for joining me on my channel. Today I have a layout that I made using the December Shimmerz Paints Color Kitz collection. I used one piece of pattern paper. Well, I started out with one piece of pattern paper, and it has all of these great rectangles with scalloped borders. And so I wanted to use those as frames for my photos. I'm going to fussy cut all of those out. I'm going to leave a little bit of a red border around the outside because I like that little touch of red. And then on the other side of the paper is this banner that says fa la 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 la, and I'm going to use that as my title. After I fussy cut all those elements, I placed them aside, and then I grabbed this sheet, which has a number of images on it, and this is great because it comes in addition to the ephemera pack, and I love the way you can choose to color these any way that you would like. So I end up just using a couple of these pieces of ephemera once they're cut out on my scrapbook layout for today's video, but I have a whole bunch of ephemera now that's all ready to go. I had a lot of fun painting this Christmas tree. I'm mixing together the reddish color that was included in the kit. It's an Inklings called Lover's Lips, and because green and red are complementary colors on the color wheel, if you want to darken up either red or green, you could add a little bit of the other color to it, and that will cause that color to get a little bit darker, but in a more colorful way than if you were, say, adding black to try to make it darker. And I know that adding complementary colors together sometimes gets a bad rap. People say that it's mud, and yes, if you add equal amounts of the two colors together, you will get a brownish color, but if you're careful and you just add the complementary color in small amounts, you'll just get a darker shade of the color you're working with. And that comes in really handy. And I was really happy with the way that tree came out. I didn't end up using it on this layout, but I did really like it. So I ended up using the stars. I used the little candy striped piece that's at the top of this sheet. And I also used the snowman. But now I have a whole bunch of ephemera pieces that I could use on any layout. So here are those rectangles cut out. I had used the center of the one at the very top that has the little green border on my other layout that I made for Shimmerz this month, and that's what gave me the idea to use these as frames. I saw that it was just about the right size for putting a photo behind. And I don't end up putting photos in every single one of these rectangles, but I do add quite a few photos to this layout, more than I usually do. I love to make pages that have just one photo on them because then I feel like I can get very creative with a lot of the space, whereas when I have photos on most of the space, it's more difficult to have a lot of mixed media or a lot of mixed media showing, I guess I could say. But I really didn't want to have a separate layout for each of these photos. I feel like they all kind of tell the same story. So I thought that if I made the photos a little bit smaller, that I would be able to make one layout and all the pictures would kind of work together to tell the story of decorating the Christmas tree. Several years ago, I bought a Canon selfie photo printer. They were very popular at the time. And while I like it and I find it handy, I feel like there's probably something else out there now that has a little bit better quality prints. If anybody uses a small scale printer and really likes the quality, I would love to know what you use. But I have to say that it does come in handy in these instances when I want to scale down some of my 4x6 inch photos. So that's what I did. I printed out my photos in a number of different sizes to see which ones would look best in these squares. Well, I ended up with 4 different photos. I also have a pink square at the bottom. I'm going to put a sentiment there. And then I replaced the little yellow rectangle that was on the left with this little ephemera piece from the kit. And I thought that this was really cute. And later on, I could add a little bit of journaling to the lines that are on there. The frame for the photo all the way on the right-hand side didn't have a bottom to it. So I used another little piece of another frame that was only partial. And I kind of pieced it together at the bottom. And I have to put a little something over where those two pieces of paper meet. But I think that it worked pretty well to put all those pieces together because that was just the right size for that photo there. So here you can see I have a lot of ephemera pieces to the right that came in the pack. I also have a lot of the items that I painted and then cut out on top of the layout. And I didn't include all the footage because it went on for a long time, but I did trial a lot of the pieces of ephemera on the layout before deciding which ones to use. And the color that I used to paint those stars is from a previous kit. It's called Fire and Ice. It's a Shimmerz, and it's so unbelievably shimmery. I love that color. Unfortunately, I lost some of it when I didn't attach the cap correctly, and I put it in a bag to transport to a crop, but I have to order another one of those because that's one of my all-time favorite colors. It's just so sparkly. So I decided I was going to add a rainbow off to the right. I love the way that's not really like a traditional Christmas embellishment, but it just, I feel like, balance out this whole cluster, and it's just really cute. It has all the colors of this collection in one place. And then I was thinking that instead of using that pattern paper that I had been working on earlier, I was going to make a mixed media background on a piece of smooth white cardstock. I always add white Liquitex gesso, or usually anyway, to my smooth white cardstock to make sure that the paint doesn't soak into the paper. So I'm using my favorite packaging technique. The color that I'm using here is a Shimmerz called Pull Me Close. This is included in the December kit. And by the way, the December kit is still available in the Shimmer shop. The link to the Shimmer shop is in the description box. And before I forget, I should tell you that when you place an order with Shimmerz Paints, if you use my name in the comments, you'll receive a free gift. Well, earlier I drew a light pencil line to just give me a general idea of where I wanted to add the color in the background. And then I keep putting my big cluster back on top just to make sure that enough paint is showing, or not too much paint is showing around the outside of that cluster. Now, it all depends on the look that you want to go for. I usually like to apply the color several times to build up a deeper, richer color. But if you just want a little hint of color, you don't have to do that. But that's something that I do regularly. I make sure that the first application of color is dry, and then I go back in and I add the second application of color. And here I am drawing the background again with my heat tool. I knew that my plan here was to add some snowflakes using the stencil that came in the December kit. So I did want this color to be pretty dark so that you'd be able to see the snowflakes, or at least a little hint of the snowflakes when I add them. So you could see here that I added a number of layers of color, and then I go back in with splatters because I love splatters. I think that splatters just add a nice little random element to the background. And a mixed media background just doesn't look complete to me until there are at least a couple of splatters. And then it's important, if you want to have some splatters on your layout, to add some water to the paint to make it easier for those splatters to move around a little bit. You don't want to leave the paint thick. It makes it much more difficult to splatter. So once I was happy with the way that the background looked, I allowed it to dry completely, and then I added some modeling paste. This is from the Crafter's Workshop, and I'm using the beautiful stencil that was included in the December kit. I just really am in love with this stencil. I use it on my first layout too. It's just so super pretty. So while the modeling paste is still wet, I'm adding some embossing powder. And I got this embossing powder secondhand. Somebody was passing it along for a very low price, so I decided to grab it. It's from Stampin' Up. It's called Iridescent Ice. And I'm not heating anything yet. I'm going to go around the entire area where I have the color. I'm going to add the modeling paste, and then I'm going to add the embossing powder, and then I'm going to heat emboss the entire area all at once. Now, I personally find that sometimes embossing on a mixed media background can be a little bit tricky. First of all, you have to make sure that your background is completely dry. Otherwise, the embossing powder will stick all over the place. It won't just stick to where you apply either the adhesive or, in this case, the modeling paste. And you could also use lots of other products in order to stick the embossing powder down, but I like to use modeling paste. It gives a little bit of dimension to the snowflakes. And sometimes when using the modeling paste, the amount of texture will trap some of the embossing powder in spots that you don't want it. So a lot of times I'll tap the paper gently from the back to kind of loosen up any of that embossing powder that's caught. But on a layout like this, I'm not so super concerned about there being embossing powder in places that I don't necessarily plan on having it, because to me it'll just look like a snowy background. But sometimes that's really key. You want to make sure that the embossing powder that's not on the images that you either stenciled or stamped is off of the layout. So Yeah, it could be a little bit trickier. It's definitely a little bit easier when you use adhesive rather than modeling paste, if that's the case where you want a really crisp, clear image and you want to make sure that there's no embossing powder caught anywhere. So here's that banner that I fussy cut out, fa la 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 la. And so I use the matching colors of Distress Oxide that I had on hand, and I inked the edges of all of those letters. And then I was thinking that it would look nice if there was a little bit of a background behind this mixed media paper. So I decided to trim it down a little bit and then use this piece of pattern paper. I like the red border. And so I'm going to gut this paper. I don't want to waste any of the paper. And I'm going to layer my mixed media background on top of it. And I didn't include it in the video, but I did put a whole piece of 12 by 12 inch cardstock behind the red piece of paper that I gutted before I attempted to add the mixed media background on top. And I do that because I find it's very difficult for me to work with those gutted pieces of paper. They're a little bit difficult to, I think, handle, just for me maybe, but I find it a lot easier to use when I have it attached down to a 12 by 12 inch piece of paper. And I do want to mention that I did heat emboss all of those snowflakes before proceeding, and now my background, or my mixed media background, is complete. And I added a piece of cardstock behind these frames because they're just attached on the edge. I didn't want them to fall apart, so I just stuck a piece of paper in the middle, and that connected all the frames. And then I added the adhesive and I stuck the entire cluster down to my background. And then I put the title up at the top. And then I added one of the dots. It says Merry Christmas. These are included in the kit. And in this case, I was thinking maybe I'll give it a little bit of extra dimension. So I added a piece of fun foam behind the dot, and then I attached it down kind of in somewhat of the center of this big cluster. And then the sentiment that's at the bottom, it says, May your days be merry and so bright. And I thought that that was a nice spot to have a sentiment. It kind of balances with the title being on the top. So I am usually not brave enough to glue anything down, but I think I'm pretty set on the fact that this banner should go on the top. And I guess I shouldn't say I don't glue things down. I'm usually hesitant to glue things down using liquid glue just because I have been known to make some changes. Sometimes a day after I finish the layout, sometimes a week. I've even changed things a year afterwards. So the little arm of the snowman had fallen off, and I'm so famous for losing those pieces. So I made sure that I put it in a spot. I had a little lid to a jar, and I put it off to the side so that when I had that snowman where I wanted it, I would be able to add its arm, and it actually worked this time. Usually I'm misplacing things like that. So one of the things that I love to add to kind of add the finishing touches to layouts is pearls and jewels and little embellishments like that, sometimes dots. And I have a stash of them that I've built up over the years, and I have them in a lot of different colors. So I decided that I was just going to put one matching pearl in the center of each of the A's. I was initially thinking of adding a whole bunch of jewels all over the title, but then I changed my mind and decided that it just wasn't necessary. I did also want to add a couple of jewels to each of the pictures. So I picked, once again, a matching color. These are not jewels, these are self-adhesive pearls. And I added them to the corners of each of the frames. So here I'm repositioning one of the pictures. Initially, I had the bottom of that picture covered up, so I had centered the picture differently. But now that you can see the whole thing, I moved it around a little bit so it would look like there was a more even matte all around the outside. So the tradition of the Christmas tree has been a little crazy in my house. Years ago, it used to be a great tradition. The kids would pick out their favorite ornaments and we would hang them up. And then as the kids got older, it just became a little bit more of a chore because I was always doing it by myself, with my husband too, but I was doing a lot of the decorating myself. And then we got so many dogs that it was a real possibility that they could destroy the ornaments on the tree. So we tried moving the tree downstairs, but now there's a lot of stuff in the room downstairs. So we have had a number of very tiny trees over the years just to be in the Christmas spirit. But this is our full-size tree. So this goes back to 2019 when we had our full-size tree upstairs. And I guess we didn't finish decorating it because these pictures were taken on December 25th. It looks like we had already opened our presents, and I think Julia wanted us to have a nice decorated tree. So good for her. She put the ornaments on the tree. Now, I added a few little dots to the snowman's eyes, or the snow girl's eyes. I'm not really sure. And I just thought that added a nice little touch. And then this little tiny Christmas tree over here just needed a little bit of extra, something special, I thought. So I added a whole bunch of teeny tiny little pearls in all the colors on the layout to that tree. And then I added this little ephemera piece that has all of these beautiful Christmas lights on it. And I think that adds a nice little touch on the bottom. And then aren't these candy canes so cute? I used one of them on the first layout I made for the month, and I really wanted to use this one. So I inked the edges with my pink dauber, and then I attach that down to the left of the cluster. And that completes this layout. Thank you, my wonderful friends, for watching this video. I really appreciate your time. Please don't forget to check out the links to the Shimmer shop in the description box, and I hope you have a very happy new year. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.